While the MRI does not use ionizing radiation, there are some issues that we have to talk about as far as some risks associated with it. The big one goes back to the idea we talked about that as the radio frequency pulses are absorbed into the water molecules, they energize them, they can heat up the body in a very, very similar way to the way the microwave works. To some extent, we are microwaving people in the MRI machines, and we have to be very careful about how much we microwave them. You can look here at and see that this is a map of where the body is absorbing the radio frequency pulses from the MRI, and you can see the corresponding differences in the increase in temperature over time. So the more they absorb, the more SAR there is, the higher the temperature increase, and you have to really regulate this. If it absorbs too much, you can actually burn a person. In fact, in some extreme cases, really high absorption materials, such as metals, can cause severe problems. There was a case we ran into in the woman who was allowed to wear her blouse into the MRI scan, but what the technician didn't realize is that there was gold thread in the blouse. About 10 minutes into the scan, her blouse actually burst into flame. In the cases of tattoos that use metallic inks, you can actually get second and third degree burns as the metals absorb so much heat that they'll burn the body. So we have to be very careful about that. External metal is often a major concern. Anything that is in that room will be sucked into the MRI, which will be deadly to anybody that is inside that bore. So you have to be very careful about keeping any kind of metal out from the room. Internal metals are also a concern. Any internal metal that, for example, was from a surgery or from, if you're a welder, you might have bits of metal in you. Anything that has sort of been embedded in the body can have several negative consequences. One is that it'll disrupt the scan. So what we're seeing here is distortion caused by metal. So down here we see somebody who had orthodontic work, and we can see the signal gets distorted. Here is a metal plate, and you can see how it pulls the signal, making it difficult to interpret. But any kind of any kind of ferromagnetic, any kind of magnetic metals in the body will heat up and cause all kinds of problems if they're allowed to be scanned. So that's why we have to be very careful to make sure that people who are getting the scans don't have metal in the body. And you ask, have you ever been shot? Have you ever been stabbed? Have you ever been a welder? Right? We actually had a case where a guy was in the scan for a while and then reported a tingling sensation in his cheek. Pull him out of the MRI, and we realized that there's, after an x-ray, that there's a BB embedded in his cheek. His mom reported later that his brother shot him with a BB gun when he was 2 years old, and they never did find the BB. Well, it turned out it was embedded in the cheek, and the MRI was heating it up. Right? So you have to be very careful about any potential metals that might be in there. So while the lack of ionizing radiation means that the MRI is generally much safer than other imaging techniques, and there's very low risk to subjects and participants, there are a few things that we have to be careful of.